Okay, good morning. I am back. Last weekend I was out hunting with my one of my sons. We did not have any success. I know some people will be happy about that. Others can commiserate with me and say, "Oh shoot." Um, I'm definitely going to try to get back out on the stand this weekend. I probably should have been out there this morning. It's like 50 degrees outside here in Minnesota. That is crazy for this time of year. For I don't know. It's it's hunting weather. Um, Let me open up my comments here. Okay. So let me do my introductions too. I'm out of practice for doing a show. I skip a week and I have to sit down and relearn everything. Even on some of the technology, it's like, oh yeah, I did this, and this to get it all set up so it streams and whatnot. We're streaming on Instagram. Rumble is my primary repository for streaming videos. The whole archive out there. Today's a big day in terms of my streaming uh, history because today is episode 75. 75 weekends I have put together a live stream, and that is phenomenal. I'm excited about that. It's fun to see. I am Dr. Jeff Evenson. I'm a board certified doctor of holistic health. I practice out of my homestead. My business is called Evenson Holistic Natural Health Center. So I practice out of my homestead in northern Minnesota. I work with people in person or virtually. I have through telehealth. I have clients all over the country, and it is so fun to be able to connect up and work with people, um, regardless of where they're at. And I've been in practice now for over 16 years. And today I want to talk about there's a new blood test out there called the MVX Plus. It's MVX stands is short for metabolic vulnerability index. Okay, and folks, I'm telling you, this blood test is a game changer, and it pairs so easily, so well with muscle testing, whether quantum nutrition testing, which is my primary practice. Nutrition response testing is how I practiced for 14 years, really, um, and added in the quantum nutrition testing. And I have not practiced, I have not used blood labs during the whole time. Okay. Um, because muscle testing gives me typically the information that I need to help move somebody into better health. And so until now, this MVX Plus is a potential game changer. And so I'm bringing it in as a service to my practice. I'm calling the service Cellular Vitality Assessment because and we'll get into what the MVX Plus lab tests mean and what they do and how they compare with other lab tests and all that kind of stuff. There's so much there. Sorry, I have a couple squirrels dancing around my front yard. There's so much out there that we can do, and you're going to hear some of the frustrations as I get talking into the stream here about what those frustrations are. If you happen to be watching, feel free to say hi in the comments if you can. I know not all platforms let you do that. I know Rumble does. There's a live chat. You can poke in and just say hi and tell me where you're streaming from. I'd love to know where people are watching from. It's kind of fun. So let's grab our coffee. Okay. My military shirt today is "You are enough." All right. And sometimes that's a message that I need to hear the most. I'm going to post on that a little bit later to my Facebook story. But um, there, this organization, every T-shirt that you buy from them, they contribute to different veteran foundations, and I love supporting the vets. As you can see in my background, I'm a vet myself of 20 years. I was in the Navy, and now I'm doing holistic practice, helping people get their health back. So let's dive in. Okay, um, when I sit with a client who looks me in the eye and says, "Doc, my labs say everything is normal. So why do I feel this bad?" Okay. And there's always a pause inside of me when that happens because I know that pain. I have lived it myself for years. All right. And I know exactly what they're feeling when they tell me that. They're exhausted. They're inflamed. They're wired at night and wrecked in the morning. Their digestion is off. Their mood is up and down. Their hormones feel like they're running a circus. And yet every doctor visit ends with the same line: everything looks fine. So what they're really hearing is, you're not sick enough yet for us to do anything. And that's the problem with modern labs. They tell you when a system has failed, not when it's struggling. I've spent almost two decades working in the trenches of holistic health, and I've watched the same story unfold again and again. People walk around with chronic fatigue, burnout, mold toxicity, gut dysfunction, emotional trauma locked in their physiology. And because their blood work fits inside a population based reference range, nobody takes it seriously. And this is exactly why the MVX Plus labs exist. These labs don't look for disease, they look for decline. They look for the early shifts that happen when the body is fighting to keep up. They look at the metabolism, not the organs. They look long before the red flags show up on a conventional blood lab panel. And so for years, researchers and clinicians, people like Dr. Royal Lee in the early days, and later Dr. Darren Schmidt, a great friend and colleague, have been pointing out that you can see metabolic dysfunction years before a diagnosis. The problem is nobody was looking, at least not in the traditional system. MVX Plus is different. It's built to answer the question conventional labs can't. Why do I feel this way? And for so many people, especially those who have lived in a state of chronic stress, past trauma, environmental exposures, infections, or just the wear and tear of life, this kind of lab is a life-changing piece of information. So today on the show, I want to walk you through why MVX Plus matters, what it reveals, what it reveals that the typical blood test never will, and how this test fits into the cellular vitality assessment that I'm now offering. Because when you understand what these markers truly mean, you'll start to see the body in a completely different way. And this is not about diagnosing disease. I do not diagnose. I am not a medical doctor. I do not practice medicine. This is about reading the story your cells are telling before the damage sets in. So let's dig in. If you're just joining the show, say hi in the chat and let us know where you're watching from, please. And if you have any questions along the way, I'll do my post them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. All right. So let's talk about why the conventional labs miss the real story. All right. When you step back and look at how conventional labs were designed, the whole puzzle suddenly makes sense. Okay. The medical system built these tests to detect disease, not dysfunction. They're not evaluating your vitality, your cellular performance, your metabolic efficiency, or your resilience. They're simply checking for organ failure, crisis, and pathology. And this is why so many people fall into the same trap. Their labs look normal, air quotes, but their life doesn't feel normal at all. So let me explain it in plain language. Most of the ranges that you see on a standard blood test are population based pathology ranges. They take the whole population, whether it's by state or by country, and they come up with a whole pathology range of what those numbers, those lab numbers, should look like. That means they take a slice of the general population, average the numbers, and call that normal. But here's the part that nobody tells you: that population includes people who are sick, diabetic, inflamed, overweight, toxic, exhausted, and barely hanging on. So when you fit inside that average, all it means is you're not worse than the average American. It does not mean you're healthy. It does not mean your metabolism is functioning optimally. It does not mean you're on a path to long term wellness. So, as a holistic practitioner, I'm not interested in whether your markers avoid the crisis zone. I want to know if your body is running efficiently. I want to know if your cells are producing energy or struggling to keep up. I want to know if chronic stress has altered your physiology. I want to know if your liver is getting overwhelmed, if your mitochondria are slipping, if your gut is contributing to systemic load, or if underlying infections have been grinding away at your vitality for years. These things don't show up in conventional lab ranges. They show up in the patterns behind the numbers. They show up in subtle shifts of electrolytes. They show up in liver enzymes that are normal but not optimal. They show up in the glucose markers that haven't tripped the diabetic line yet, but clearly reveal strain. And so they show up in the thyroid labs that look fine on the surface, but show poor conversion underneath. They show up in cholesterol patterns that reveal inflammation long before a cardiologist would blink. People walk around with this internal struggle because their physiology is whispering, but the system only listens when it screams. And this is exactly why MVX Plus was created, to hear what the body says before the crash. So I want to lay the foundation for why the old way of reading labs doesn't work for the modern world. Too much toxicity, too much stress, too much burnout, too much metabolic dysfunction hiding under normal numbers. MVX Plus, folks, I'm telling you, flips the script by evaluating how your body operates at the cellular and metabolic level. And when you understand what that means, everything changes. So we're going to break down what MVX Plus actually measures and why those markers tell the story that conventional labs never will. So hang with me. All right. Let me check in with my technology here. Good. All right. So now that we've laid the groundwork for why traditional labs miss the early warning signs, let's talk about what MVX Plus actually looks at. Okay. Because this test wasn't built to diagnose disease. It was built to evaluate cell stress and metabolic resilience, the things that determine how you feel every single day. When I look at an MVX Plus panel, I'm reading the story of how your body is handling life. And so here's a breakdown of the key categories that the MVX Plus panel focuses on. The first one is, let me double check all these here. Yep. The first one is looking at mitochondrial stress and energy production. This is the heart of the entire panel. Okay, your mitochondria are the engines that power your cells, and for most people, they're struggling long before symptoms start. So MVX Plus evaluates markers that reveal inefficient ATP production, oxidative stress, overuse of certain pathways, nutrient depletion at the cellular level. And so people with chronic fatigue, Mold toxicity, infections, burnout, or trauma almost always show these patterns. Then there's liver burden and detox pathways. The liver rarely raises flags in conventional labs until there's damage. MVX Plus is different. It looks at subtle enzyme shifts, detox load patterns, nutrient deficiencies that impair clearance, and early congestion that slows metabolism. Okay, this is how you catch issues from mold, pesticides, solvents, fragrances, medications, and chronic inflammation years before a diagnosis. Then we have blood sugar handling and metabolic strain. Okay, before your A1C climbs, before glucose spikes, before insulin resistance becomes measurable, there are early signs. MVX Plus looks at the shift from aerobic to anaerobic metabolism, stress on the glucose regulation pathways, patterns that show pre-diabetes long before the medical system sees it. And this alone explains why why so many people feel fatigued, hungry, inflamed, or foggy, even with normal blood sugar labs. There's thyroid conversion and cellular response. Okay, you can have normal TSH, normal T4, no diagnosis, and still feel exhausted, cold, depressed, anxious, or weight loss resistant. MVX Plus screens for metabolic markers that reveal poor T4 to T3 conversion, chronic stress patterns that suppress thyroid expression, nutrient demands tied to thyroid efficiency. This gives the insight the standard thyroid panel simply can't give us. Then there's subclinical inflammation and the hidden stressors. This is where chronic infections, parasites, mold, and environmental toxins often reveal themselves, not in a loud dramatic spike, but in a cluster of subtle metabolic detours. The panel picks up patterns associated with chronic immune activation, systemic inflammation, gut dysfunction, long-term stress responses, malnutrition. These are the things that drain vitality slowly over time. There's cardiovascular stress long before lipids change. Okay, MVX Plus isn't looking at cholesterol for disease. And let me do a side note here, in case you haven't been paying attention. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Inflammation and sugar do that. MVX Plus it's looking at inflammation, oxidation, and metabolic load. And this gives us a more accurate picture of future cardiovascular risk than a standard lipid panel ever could. And then there's the acid-base balance and cellular respiration, and most people are running too acidic or are trending toward anaerobic metabolism from chronic stress. This throws off everything from hormones to mood, and MVX Plus picks up on these internal shifts. Okay, why does this matter? Because every one of these markers tells you how the body is functioning today, not how much damage exists. When a client sees this test, something clicks. They finally understand why they are tired, inflamed, anxious, foggy, moody, sluggish, or stuck. There's finally a measurable reason. And for you, integrating this with quantum nutrition testing in your cellular vitality assessment gives you the complete picture. MVX Plus shows what the cells are struggling with, and quantum nutrition testing and muscle testing shows the root stressor driving it. And that's where real change begins. Now, I talked about all the markers, at a higher level. There's what the test is actually looking at. I'm going to just cover that as an aside, okay? When I talk about the MVX Plus, I'm really talking about a very specific cluster of 6 nuclear magnetic resonance markers. These 6 were researched in a large population and heart disease cohorts and combined into what is called the metabolic vulnerability index. And in plain language, here's what they are and what they tell me. Okay, glyc A, GLYC-A, is a composite marker of systemic inflammation and often infection. That number, it reflects how revved up the immune system is at a low chronic level, not just an acute spike like the CRP panel can show. When glyc A runs high, it usually tells me the body is dealing with inflammatory load from things like chronic infections, toxins, metabolic stress, or hidden tissue damage. I think of glyc A as the simmering inflammation meter. Okay. Then it's looking at small HDL particles, small HDL-P. Instead of just measuring total HDL, this looks at the number of small HDL particles. And these small HDL particles are very sensitive to toxins and inflammatory stress. When the pattern is off, it often reflects a combination of toxic exposure, oxidative stress, and metabolic strain. And we can look at the small HDL-P as the detox and toxicity stress signal. Then we're looking at citrate. Citrate sits right in the center of the Krebs cycle, the core of cellular energy production. Okay, when citrate is off, it suggests mitochondrial dysfunction, poor oxidative metabolism, or a shift away from efficient energy production. And practically, this correlates with fatigue, poor stamina, slow recovery, and metabolic drag. And I think of citrate as the mitochondria performance gauge. Okay. Then it's looking at 3 branch chain amino acids: valine, leucine, and isoleucine. And these reflect protein status, muscle metabolism, and aspects of nutritional sufficiency. And so when they're low or dysregulated levels are strongly associated with metabolic malnutrition and protein energy wasting. And so in real life, that can show up as weakness, poor muscle maintenance, slow healing, and a body that simply does not have the raw materials to repair and rebuild. And so we can look at this, the BCAAs, the branched chain amino acids, as the muscle and protein reserve meter. Okay. So from those 6 markers, the researchers built 2 subscores. One is the inflammation vulnerability index. That tells us it reflects inflammation and toxicity burden. And they built the metabolic malnutrition index. That's driven from the citrate plus the branched chain amino acids and can reflect protein energy status. And so those 2 indexes are combined into the MVX score itself, which is what MVX Plus reports as that as 1 to 100 vulnerability score tied to mortality and chronic disease risk. And so the higher the number, the worse off things are. We'll get deeper into that a little bit. And when I did my first MVX Plus lab, I scored a 25. At 60 years old, 25 is pretty damn good. And I was told by Dr. Darren Schmidt that number is great for any age. Okay. And so what's cool about the MVX Plus test is you can take it every few months if you're on some kind of a program to heal, and you can see if your numbers are shifting with the progress that you're doing. All right. So now we're going to talk about, people, why do I feel this way? Okay. When someone comes into my office telling me they're exhausted, inflamed, foggy, anxious, bloated, wired at night, dragging in the morning, and just not themselves, they've already been carrying that weight for a long time. Doesn't just show up overnight. Most people don't book with me because they're suddenly unwell. Okay. They book with me because they've been unwell for years and nobody can tell them why. And this is exactly where MVX Plus shines. When I sit down with a client and go through the MVX Plus markers, I'm not just looking at numbers, I'm looking at the story of their metabolism. Patterns of stress, evidence of long-term strain, signals the body has been sending out for years that no one has known how to interpret. And so MVX Plus answers the question that conventional labs can't. Why do I feel this way when my labs look normal? Because the truth is, you can feel absolutely terrible while still being inside a reference range in conventional labs. You can feel fatigued while your basic thyroid labs look fine. You can have brain fog and inflammation while your liver enzymes look normal. You can gain weight or lose motivation while your glucose panel still says you're okay. And you can have chronic symptoms while every doctor tells you nothing is wrong. The MVX Plus panel maps out the stress behind the symptoms. It shows where the mitochondria are struggling, how the liver is keeping up, whether the thyroid is actually converting, how the body is handling sugar, oxygen, and inflammation, where toxic load may be slowing everything down, how the systems are communicating under the surface. And for my clients, this is often the moment everything shifts because finally, the inside matches the outside. Their lived experience makes sense. And when something finally makes sense, healing can begin. This is why MVX Plus integrates so beautifully with the way I practice. My work has always been about root cause. I use quantum nutrition testing and muscle testing to identify the stressors the body is responding to. And when I combine that with the MVX Plus, I get to see the impact of those stressors in real time. One shows the why, the other shows how it's affecting you. And together they form a roadmap. This is why I built the cellular vitality assessment the way I did. It's not a program based on guessing. It's not based on symptom chasing. It's built on understanding. Because when you know what is stressing the cells and you know why they're stressed, the solutions become clear. So we're going to dive into how I interpret an MVX panel, the patterns I look for, and how this integrates directly into a personalized healing strategy. So when I open an MVX Lab Plus for an MVX Plus lab for a client, I'm not scanning the page for one out of range marker. I'm looking at the entire metabolic landscape. These labs are like a topographical map of the body. They reveal where the terrain dips, where it rises, where the pressure is building, and where the system is losing ground. My job is to read the terrain. I'm looking for the story between the numbers. And that story always shows up in patterns. And here are some of the key patterns that I watch for. We talked about it a little bit. The mitochondrial pattern. That's usually where chronic fatigue, long-term stress, and post-infection states show up. And I can see whether the cells are making energy efficiently, whether oxygen is being used properly, whether the body's slipping into anaerobic metabolism, whether nutrients like B vitamins, iron, or CoQ10 are being depleted under the surface. If your cells aren't functioning, you can actually reach a state of malnutrition in your body. You might be overweight, obese, and can be suffering from malnutrition because your cells are not functioning properly at the mitochondrial level. So for many people, this is the missing explanation for why they wake up tired or crash in the afternoon. I'm looking also for the liver stress pattern. I can find out how burdened the liver is, if detox pathways are congested, whether inflammation is showing clearance, slowing clearance, whether chronic toxicity is showing its signature. This is especially important for people dealing with mold, environmental exposures, fragrances, pesticides, or a history of medications. I'm looking at glucose regulation patterns. This is where the early stages of metabolic dysfunction hide. Not diabetic, not pre-diabetic, but under stress. I can look at cellular sugar handling, tissue level insulin response, the shift toward anaerobic metabolism, early inflammation signals. This explains why someone may feel hangry, inflamed, or foggy even with a normal fasting glucose. The thyroid conversion pattern is in there. TSH often tells you nothing about how your thyroid is actually functioning. On MVX Plus, I can see how the body is converting thyroid hormones, how stress and inflammation are interfering, whether the metabolism is slowing or speeding, where nutrient demand is shifting. This connects the thyroid to the entire metabolic picture. The chronic stress and infection pattern, it's one of the most eye-opening clusters on the panel. We can see low-grade inflammation, chronic immune activation, hidden gut stress, the metabolic signature of long-term viral or bacterial load, the systemic burden that never gets picked up on routine labs. It's never one marker, it's the pattern that reveals the story. The cardiovascular risk pattern, instead of waiting for cholesterol to go sideways, I can see oxidative stress, endothelial strain, inflammation signatures, early cardiovascular load. This gives a far more accurate prediction of long-term cardiovascular health than a standard lipid panel. And there's the acid-base cellular respiration pattern. Here I can see how well the cells are using oxygen. If the body is chronically acidic, if stress has shifted the metabolism out of its normal rhythm, this ties directly into energy, mood, inflammation, and recovery. So when I walk a client through these patterns, something shifts in them. They can finally see why their symptoms exist, why they've been stuck, why the conventional system has missed it, and why their lived experience hasn't matched their lab printouts. Okay? It validates what they've known all along. Something has been off inside me. And from there, the healing plan becomes clear because we're no longer guessing. We're no longer chasing symptoms. We're reading the system. If you're just jumping on the show, say hi in the chat and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see where people are tuning in from. And if you have any questions along the way, please let me know. All right. So one of the reasons I decided to launch the cellular vitality assessment is because I've watched people bounce from practitioner to practitioner, trying supplements, changing diets, running random tests, and still never getting the clarity that they truly need. My goal is always to be that last practitioner in a person's journey of jumping from person to person. I want to be your last stop. And quite often I am. Okay. Every lab, a lot of people, when they're changing supplements, diets, running random tests, they still never really get clarity that they truly needed about what's going on. Every lab in the world means nothing if you don't understand the why behind the numbers. And that's where my work is different. I don't separate the biochemical from the energetic. I don't separate the physical markers from the stress patterns. I look at the entire human system. MVX Plus tells me what the cells are struggling with. Quantum nutrition tells me why. And when you put those two together, you eliminate the guesswork and let me paint the picture. Okay. MVX Plus shows me the impact, the mitochondrial strain, the liver congestion, the metabolic slowdown, the glucose pressure, the inflammatory signals, the hidden stress patterns. That's the footprint of what has been happening inside a person for years. Quantum nutrition testing shows me the driver. It reveals the toxins that the body is responding to, the pathogens creating the metabolic drag, the organ systems under the most stress, the environmental exposures the system is fighting, the emotional layers affecting the physiology, the priorities the body wants addressed first. It's like turning on the lights in a dark room. Together, they create a roadmap that's unique for each person. A client can come in with fatigue, anxiety, gut symptoms, inflammation, sleep issues, weight struggles, hormonal imbalance. But the cause behind those symptoms is never the same from one person to another. Two people can share identical symptoms and have completely different root stressors. This is why cookie cutter protocols fail. This is why chasing symptoms keeps people sick. And this is why so many people get discouraged. The MVX Plus test solves this because it connects the dots. It shows the metabolic story, and Q&T shows the root cause story. And so when I sit with someone during an MVX Plus lab review, I can show them what's draining their vitality, what's stressing their cells, which organs need support, which toxins or infections are involved, where their system is overworking, what needs to happen in the right order for healing to begin. I blend that with quantum nutrition testing. The two can work synergistically together to build a much more complete picture. And most importantly, we finally see that the clients finally see that they're not crazy, they're not making it up, and they're certainly not fine. Their body has been trying to talk, and now we can finally understand what it's been saying. This is why I use the cellular vitality assessment, the MVX Plus labs, as a starting point going forward in my practice. It gives clarity, direction, validation, strategy, and a measurable way forward. Because when you combine a lab built to detect metabolic decline with a testing method designed to identify the root stressors, you get the full truth, not just a diagnosis. I don't diagnose, I want to emphasize that. But we get a story, okay? Not just a symptom list, not just another supplement recommendation. We're going to get a blueprint for vitality. So now that we've talked about the why behind MVX Plus, and welcome if you're just tuning in. I appreciate everyone watching. Say hi in the chats. Tell me where you're watching from. That's always kind of cool to see where people are tuned in from. So now that we've talked about the why behind MVX Plus and the how behind combining it with quantum nutrition testing, I want to bring it down to earth and show you exactly what a person experiences when they step into their assessments with me. Okay, because it's not a generic run a lab and hope for the best kind of process. It's a guided journey with a beginning, a middle, and a clear direction forward. And when you sign up for the full assessment with a cellular vitality assessment, the MVX Plus lab, here's what it actually looks like. Okay, we're going to do the orientation and intake. Before I even look at a marker or run an assessment, I want to understand the person. I want to understand who you are. We all have a unique story about what's going on. Not just your symptoms, but your history, your stress load, their environment, their sleep, digestion, your emotional landscape, past trauma or infections, their lifestyle, because that's the part that makes holistic. Every piece matters. It gives me the context for what I will later see in the MVX Plus and their quantum nutrition testing results. All of that information informs me as to what the story is that we're looking at. When we do the MVX blood draw, this is where the story begins to take shape. The panel gives me a full metabolic fingerprint. Cellular energy, liver burden, glucose stress, inflammation, nutrient demand, oxidative load, detox strain. Most people have never seen their body this way before. It's often the first time they get a legitimate, this is why you feel this way moment. Once the blood work is complete, then I do a full quantum nutrition testing session, and we're going to get into the stressors behind the metabolic patterns, the toxins, infections, emotional blocks, organ priorities, environmental exposures, systemic burdens the body is asking to clear. This step tells us why the MVX Plus looks the way that it does. Without quantum nutrition testing, MVX Plus is just data. Without MVX Plus, QNT sometimes is missing the context. The MVX Plus gives us a little bit more information to inform us on what's going on inside the body. Together, they complete the picture. Then I do the report of findings session, the review session, and this is where everything clicks. I sit down with the client and walk them through the patterns, the priorities, the stress signatures, the organ systems that are overwhelmed, the physiological consequences that they've been feeling, and the root drivers beneath it all. Clients usually say the same thing here. I've never had anyone explain my body like this. They finally see how their symptoms connect to their internal stress load. There's no guessing, no vague theories, no random supplement buying. They get clarity. And I can put together a strategy, a blueprint on how to navigate that person through what they need to do to put together the exact sequence of healing, the order the body wants to address things, what to support, what to clear, what to avoid, what timing is appropriate, what lifestyle shifts matter most, what supplements are actually needed. This becomes a personalized strategy for the next phase of their care. It's simple, it's targeted, and it's built around their physiology. No two blueprints look the same because no two bodies have the same history or stress pattern. So when the assessment is complete, the client knows exactly what is stressing their system, exactly how it's impacting them, exactly what needs to change, exactly how long the process may take. Most processes, when we're working to declutter the body to get it back into health, you can be looking at a 6-month to an 18-month journey. And for some people, that can actually be longer. And on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes that's a shorter journey for people. It all depends on what they walk in the front door with. So the MVX Plus test is pretty cool. There's more to the backstory on it. Dr. Darren Schmidt, he's a friend and colleague. His practice, he's got the largest cash nutrition practice in America. He's up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's been a mentor of mine since I've been on this journey. And he's out on the circuit now teaching other practitioners like me how to use the MVX Plus test. He discovered it. He's done tons of research in the old medical journals. He was studying about lactic acidosis, which is the common platform for disease and dysfunction in the body. And then he found this test. He had read some papers and found the test. I think maybe I talk about, I thought I had more of this in my notes. Let me go up. Isn't that interesting? Didn't make it into my notes, and it's like one of the most important stories. Anyway, he found the doctors who had created these markers because they were working with NASA. They had studied almost 30,000 case studies to come up with these typical markers that now make up the metabolic vulnerability index test. What they were trying to come up with were actual markers to predict longevity and health. Okay, so the higher the number, the higher the percentage you're going to have a health problem in the next 5 years, kind of thing. And that's a pretty important test to know that information, because what's cool about that is once you know, hey, my number is really high on the MVX plus test, my longevity looks pretty grim over the next 5 years, or the chances that I'm going to have a health crisis in the next 5 years, it goes up the higher that number is. And when you see that number, it gives you something that's like, holy shit, I can do something about that and turn things around, because it's never too late to turn it around. And so he found he tried to talk to somebody at NASA about the test. They said they're not going to run it anymore because they got what they needed out of it. And he talked to the doctors who created the test. They wouldn't turn it on, and it took him almost 2 years. He finally talked to a doctor, I think he's down in North Carolina, about this test. He just called him, had read his name in some report, some research paper, and he called the doctor, and he's telling him, he goes, and the doctor's like, yeah, you can just run the MVX Plus lab and all that. And Dr. Darren Schmidt, he said, well, I don't have access to it. It doesn't come up. I can't order the lab anywhere. And the guy's like, oh, hold on. Logs into the computer, and about 15 minutes later, turned it on. It was just a matter of turning on this lab request in the computer systems at LabCorp. So turned it on, made it available. And the rest is history. With this MVX Plus test, it brings a game changer to the table. It's really quite fascinating to see. It's taken me a while to add it into my service because I was studying it and trying to understand it better, and I got it. I think I've got it, and I'm excited to move forward. The lab is, I'm going to, for new clients, make it a required lab. If the challenge is when you want the MVX Plus blood draw, you have to go to a LabCorp lab to get it. Okay. And they're all over the country. So if I'm working with somebody virtually, we'll try to find a lab in your area. For my existing clients, for my in-person clients here in Minnesota, there's a lab down in the Twin Cities that you would have to go to get your blood draw. So we can time it when, sometime when you're going down there for whatever reason, we can usually try to get an appointment in one of the labs to stop in. It's like a 2-minute process. They stick you, it's only a small vial of blood that they take, and then you go on your way. For existing clients, I have a special running. I'll talk about it at the end of the show. How, if you're interested in it, you can let me know. But normally the rate, just the lab on its own, is $135. For existing clients, I have a special running for $89. Okay. And then I will include it in the intake process for people who decide they want to do a program with me. Okay. All right. So as we wrap up today, and this is why this test matters for the next 5 years of your life. Okay. As we wrap up today, I want to bring this into a single, simple truth. Your body is always talking. The question is whether anyone has been listening. The MVX Plus lab panel is not just another piece of blood work. It's not another cholesterol test. It's not another everything looks fine. It's a cellular snapshot of where your health is trending over the next few years. And this is why I use it as a cornerstone tool in my practice. This panel has been studied and validated for something incredibly important. It predicts your metabolic stability and longevity for the next 5 years. Not 50, not your whole lifespan, the next 5. Why 5? Well, because that's where most people either decline or rebuild. 5 years is enough time for vitality to return or for chronic stress to settle in deeper. 5 years is enough time for inflammation to transform into disease or for healing to take root. And here's the part that stops people in their tracks. Your MVX plus score will show you if your current habits, your stress load, toxicity, metabolism, and nutritional status are putting you on a path of resilience or a path of vulnerability. It's not fatalistic, it's not a diagnosis, it's not fear-based, it's a forecast. Just like checking the weather before you head out on a trip. If the weather says there's a storm coming, you don't panic, you prepare. If the weather says conditions are ideal, you breathe easier. And that's what MVX Plus offers, a 5-year health forecast based on your metabolism, your inflammation load, your protein status, your repair capacity, and your mitochondrial function. And most people don't realize how much their next 5 years are shaped by what's silently happening in their cells today. Fatigue doesn't just show up. Burnout doesn't just show up. Chronic illness doesn't just show up. There's always a pattern first. And that's what this test reveals. When I combine that with quantum nutrition testing, I'm able to see not only the pattern, but the cause behind the pattern. That's how we build a roadmap to reverse those trends long before they solidify. So if you're watching this today and you've been feeling lost in your own body, if you're tired of being told everything is normal, if you want clarity about where your health is headed, not where it's been, or if you simply want to know how to build a strong, resilient body over the next 5 years, then the MVX Plus test is the best place to start. It's not a diagnostic program. It's a directional program. It shows you where you're going and how to change course if you need to. Your next 5 years are being shaped right now. And you deserve to understand exactly what your body is trying to tell you. If you're ready for that kind of clarity and direction, I'll put a link in the description. I think I can, actually, I won't, because I figured that wasn't going to work well with this whole technology. If you're ready for that kind of clarity and direction, schedule a full assessment or direct message me. Okay. You can, that much I can do. Hold on. Dun, dun, dun. I'm going to share a link here in the chat. You can schedule a full assessment with me on this link I just posted in the comments. Okay. So if any of this resonates with you, if you're curious about what your own 5-year metabolic forecast looks like, or if you feel it's time to finally understand what your body has been trying to tell you, then reach out. If you're interested in having this MVX Plus lab done, you can direct message me, text me, email me, or give me a call. I'll help you get started. And one last thing before we wrap up. Normally, this MVX Plus lab panel runs for $139 for existing clients, but for Black Friday, I'm doing something special for my existing clients. If you want to have this test drawn and receive my full interpretation report on it, you can get it right now for just $89. Just let me know that you're interested in ordering that test. So if you've been wanting clarity, if you've been wondering what your 5-year metabolic forecast looks like, or if you simply feel it's time to take the next step in your healing journey, reach out. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like I'm coming in right on time here. That is awesome. All right. So I always like to close with a prayer. Father, thank you for this time together today. Thank you for the wisdom you've given us, for the bodies you've designed with such care, and for the healing you continually make possible. I pray for every person listening that you would bring clarity where there's confusion, strength where there's fatigue, and peace where there's worry. Guide each of us to understand the signals our bodies are sending and give us the courage to take the steps we need to care for this life you've entrusted to us. Bless the work of our hands as we pursue healing. Bless those who are searching for answers, and bless the journey ahead for each heart tuned in today. May your presence lead us, restore us, and remind us that true healing comes from you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. If you have any questions, as I said at the beginning of the show and throughout, I work with people in person here physically at my office or virtually through telehealth. Okay. Doesn't matter where you're at in this country, reach out if you're looking for some help getting your health back on track. Hopefully you got something out of the show today about the MVX Plus and this lab report, why it's a good thing to run. And that's it. I love you guys. Thanks for watching.